In this tutorial, we'll be creating cat's eyes using colour pencil on Suede matte board. Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the cat in colour pencils on Suede matte board tutorial. In this part it's just under 30 minutes long and we will be looking at doing the eyes in real time. So in part 1 we transferred our line drawing over onto our Suede matte and we used the graphite transfer paper. And what we were doing now is, first thing is just go in with, we're going to use our black. I'm using the Caran D'Ache Pablos. Obviously, if you're using a different pencil, preferably wax-based pencil, so something like a Prismacolor, you can use Albrecht Dürer. They're just a little bit softer and they go down much better on the Suede matte. If you're using something like polychromos, just try them on the test area and just, but again, light layers just to test that they are going down okay. So what we do with the Suede matte, you'll as soon as you've tried it, you'll see that there's a nap to it. In other words, it's an open nap, and as you press your pencil on it, the suede can move in either direction, which can be frustrating to start with. So what you want to do is get a little bit of pigment down either side of that nap, and then do your pencil strokes in the direction that you want it to go. So you'll put a little bit of pencil stroke down around the outer edge of the eye. We're just trying to basically give ourselves a nice outline to work to here. We've just used black to outline our area. And now we've done that lightly. And we can go back in then and we will make those underneath those lids, those upper lids, quite heavy. So we'll go in with a tiny bit more pressure. Now we use different pressures when we're working on the Suede matte. We still use a lovely light touch, but you can see here I'm starting straight away using a sharp pencil. So here we're just very lightly, you'll get a feel for this of how much pressure you need. So literally back and forth scumbling motion. Just what we want to do is build up the pigment on this upper lid on both sides. That's the darkest area of the animal, remember, which usually, especially on cats and dogs, with dogs it'll be underneath, they've got like a drop flap ear, it'll be underneath that ear where it meets the cheek, and also underneath that upper lid. Even though with this cat, the cat is looking, the head is back a little bit and the eyes are looking upwards, you can still see that lovely inside of that upper lid there. So we're just using the black here. You can use sort of like a dark sepia if you don't want to go in totally black, dark indigo, or even I don't know, like a caput mortem, and then you can go in with a black or a dark indigo over the top and just mix it. But I'm more than confident to go in here. I want to keep this quite simple in coloration. The cat, I know those of you that have seen the final image will see that I do pull in lots of colours into the fur later on, but just to start out, all I want to do here is get an outline down for me to work with to actually do the eye itself. Now if you've done my cat eye tutorial, that will aid you with doing this, the eyes on this cat. It is slightly different to working on pastel matte. If you do attempt this on pastel matte, it might be worth you having a practice with the eye tutorial, or just watch that video just to understand how much you need to build layers and glaze and build dark light. With the Suede matte, you can get quite a few layers down. It is the same rule that you can work your lights over your darks, but you can put down less layers. The Suede lends itself beautifully to creating the soft fur, so the last thing you want to do really is completely crush and flatten it. I don't think, to be honest, that you can make it go smooth and glossy, but you want to make sure that you're embracing that fluffiness of the nap of the paper, the nap of the surface. You want to embrace that. That's partly why we're using this, because the cat's so fluffy. That's why we've chosen this paper. So you still see here, I'm just literally popping in, quite simple, popping in, keep flicking your eyes back to that reference photo. So eyes on the reference, on the reference, reference, on the reference. That's how much. Flick your eyes backwards and forwards. So I'm just literally light pressure, a few little, I'm wiggling the pencil, I'm touching the pencil to the suede mat, just wiggling it lightly. I'm just marking those little slits, the slits of the pupil. So I'm just making sure I'm getting it in just the right place, and just a little touch and a wiggle. You can, with a suede mat, you can't really rub out. You can lift off with like low tack tape, but you can't really rub out. But you can, same with pastel mat, you can correct with by going over it with another layer. So just to let you know that in advance. And now I've pulled in the white. And remember the white of the Pablo, I use this quite a lot in most of my drawings because it is so opaque. It's a lovely thick bright white. So again here all I'm doing is just popping in hints of that highlight. And you'll see at the end of this, my eyes don't come out exactly like that cat's reference, in the eye in the reference, but it's pretty close. It's sort of like my version of it. And this is one of those things, until you start to touch the pencil to the suede mat, you're not quite sure how they're going to react. So you can see there, I've just started to put in a light pressure, a hint of that highlight. And now I'm going back in, I'm pressing a little bit harder. So I've managed to get some of the pigment either side of the nap in that area. Because remember, the eyes, we don't want to embrace the fluffiness. We do in the fur, but we don't for the eyes. Yeah, we want to keep them soft, but we also want them to look like a round glassy ball that they are. So here, still using the white, just using different pressure to get it to lift and put, accept the pigment down onto the tooth. Now you'll find, working on suede mat, it will absorb the pencil. In other words, you'll put it down and maybe you will finish these eyes and you'll walk away, and within minutes, hours, or the next day you'll come back and it'll have soaked up all your pencil and it'll look like it's faded, and especially with your light colours and shades. So now we're going in, this is with the jade green. So again, we're using completely different colours here. So this is a beautiful, it's almost, again, if you haven't got these pencils, you're using a different brand, refer to Caran Hull's conversion charts, pencil conversion charts, and you can colour match across to any brand that she's got in the charts. So if you're using Prismacolors, you can just colour match across. So this is the jade green. Again, little hints of this just in and around the centre of the iris, around that slit of the pupil. Next, we're going in with an olive brown, and you see here I'm just sort of doing a light scumbling, so touching the pencil down, backwards and forwards motion, keeping the pencil on the suede mat, or round circular motions, and all I'm doing is literally colour placement. That's how we work with suede mat. We're just going to fill that area. It's not like with pastel mat we're going to keep building and building and glazing the layers. This is a much different working on the suede mat. You'll soon get a feel for it. It might frustrate you. And you can go back in. So if we lose too much of our jade green, we can go back in and pop a little bit more over the top. So again, a touch of the olive brown now, going up over onto the left eye. The right eye has got a lot more of the sort of like the olive brown, brown ochre colours in there. Remember still, when you're working on the eye, you always work from like the outside edge inwards, rather than drawing circles around the eyes. But with this one, we're literally picking out the shapes. I'm not thinking of it as being an eye at the moment. I'm just picking out the colours and the shapes and popping them in. And I know that, I'm going to be bringing in greys, and I'll bring in ochres. So here I'm actually bringing in now, just on that outer edge and up around that corner, I'm actually bringing in ochre. It's literally just ochre. It's quite a pale, pale tanny orange, very pale. Little touches, and again what we're going to do is just fill in the whole area. That's why we did our outline, the black outline. Fill in the whole area, and then we'll come back in and work a touch more of the detail. So this is the last of our greens now, and even though it is a green, it's olive black. So it says olive black. I'm not quite, I know the Faber-Castell names for the pencils, the Caran D'Ache names I'm just not so au fait with, and it's sort of olive black. Well, I wouldn't really call it a greenish black even. It is more olive, I'd say. It is just a darkish forest green, but that's the name of it, is olive black. So we're just going to use that as one of our darks as well. I'm just putting in little hints because it's not as harsh as the black. Little hints of those markings around the iris. Little touches over the top of that ochre, softening where that shadow meets the top of the eye. But it is all about flicking your eyes back and forth to that reference. Back and forth, back and forth. You see here, I'm probably taking that darker than it is, but we can glaze over the top. We'll come in and redo our highlight if we lose any of the highlight as well. And if you see different colours, like say your screen, your computer screen, your tablet, your printout, it will be different to mine. There's not much of a chance it will be exactly the same as mine. So if you see slightly a different variation of colours in there, then of course use those colours. You don't have to use exactly the same colours as me. If you're following the tutorial exact, then yeah, of course, please do. But if you see other colours, this is a great way. If you're following a tutorial and yet you've got access to more colours, and as you're following along you see a different colour to the one that I used, and you've got the confidence to go, no, I'm not going to use the one Lisa says, I'm going to pull in one of my own. That is fab, because it means you're starting to build your confidence, and you're also starting to see the colours yourself. You're not following exactly what I can see through my eyes. So yay if you're pulling in other colours. And don't worry if you're not, because you're seeing the same as me if not. Okay, so we've just got the ash grey now. So remember I said, rather than it being just a palish green down the front here, we're using an ash grey. And the ash grey is quite a warm, it's almost got a greenish hue to it anyway, the ash grey. It's just very, very soft. So I'm just keeping the pencil on the suede mat. I lift and turn because that helps to keep the nib sharp as well, more so on a sanded paper. But it's just glazing over the top, over some of those darker areas, just glazing up over. And you'll see now that we've pretty much filled all of that space, the internal space from the outline on that left eye now, which didn't take long. It's only taken us just over 10 minutes. And again with this, we'll take them pretty much to completion, but we will need to, like I said, when you walk away from suede mat, you can come back and it will have absorbed the pigment. So you will get frustrated. I get frustrated. But it's all about, again, patience, and just, it gives such a beautiful effect. It is worth sticking it out and persevering. Anyway, who wants to make life easy? We want to be doing the things that other people don't want to do because it's too frustrating and takes a bit more time. It's taking that extra bit of time that makes your work different to everybody else's. So having the patience and the perseverance and the will to just go that extra mile with your work pays dividends. That's what makes the difference. So just keep an eye here. Again, we're using just that ash grey down across that front, and we've literally just filled in the whole of that right hand eye as well now, and I took it just up around that bottom right edge, and it just gave us a lovely shape to that eye there now. So I've brought in here now, I've got some of the Bistra, we all say it's slightly different. So I'm just softening that top shadow down into the eye from underneath that upper lid. I don't want to go too dark with some of these marks. I probably need to pop some of these. See now where I've taken that in, I've lost some of the ochre, I've lost some of the initial green, but I do need to get some of these little dark marks in there. See, they've all gone too dark now, but once again, we'll soften them. We can go back in over the top and we'll soften them. So the thing, don't panic, especially like I mentioned earlier on. If you make a mistake on this, it's not the end of the world. You can correct it with the next layer. You can always usually correct on the suede mat, on the textured surfaces, your sanded papers, your pastel mats. There's always room for corrections. Hence why I very, very, very rarely ever use an eraser. I might use it as a tool to lift pigment on smooth papers, to create lines or something and texture, but I don't use it as an eraser to erase a mistake. I usually correct rather than erase. Just adding in there a little touch of the shape of that nose, because that the eye sits behind that muzzle, so I just need a little hint of that in place. So I've gone back now to where we've gone in and it's all gone a little bit dark. So what we do now is we just repeat what we initially did. So where we've lost some of that initial jade green, we pop that back in, and we do the same with the other colours that we've used along the way. So if you've lost some of your olive brown, pop some of that in. If you've lost some of your ochre, pop some of that back in. And just work your way around the eye, and then of course we'll go back in with the ash grey later on as well. So here we go, some of the ochre up on that top left area, and we'll need some probably over on that right hand eye as well, and that right hand side of that left eye as we look at it. Again, my camera, my recording screen, because I work under a daylight lamp, it is slightly brighter than you would normally use for recording, so it is showing slightly softer and lighter on the camera than it is in reality. That's the hard thing about trying to depict something like this on a tutorial. I'm showing you the technique. The colour might not, then again, like I said before, your reference photo colour might be completely different to mine as well, so it's more of a technique that I'm showing you here. Again, pressure, if you've done a pressure test, we're talking sort of a 4, we'll put our pencil down at about maybe a 3 pressure, and we'll press to a 4 to 5 pressure on the scale of 1 to 10. So about a medium pressure, slightly heavier than we would use on pastel mat. So here I've gone back in with that ash grey again, using that as my softener down over the bottom areas of the eyeball itself. Same over here, because obviously I need to sort of blend between that jade green and over those dark marks. I'm just softening some of those up now by glazing over the top. Now I want to go back in. See, I've lost that highlight quite a bit, so I'm just going back in and popping in some of that highlight again that almost vanished. And again, we'll have to do that again if you leave it and come back tomorrow, or wait till the end of the actual drawing, go back in. But every time you look at those eyes or any area that you think, oh God, that's lost, that's soaked up the pigment now, I need to pop it back in, just go back in and add a little touch back in. See here, I've actually used my watercolour pencil. And what I've done is I've just wet the end, the tip, the nib, and I've gone back in and I'm just pressing that pigment onto the pupil. Now you don't have to do this. Again, it's just I've wanted to show you that how much more intense you can make that white. It wasn't going on quite bright enough, so I've used this. You don't have to do this. If you want, you can use a touch of odorless mineral spirits on your wax pencil and do a similar thing, or you can use sort of some of the titanium white from Aliona's brush and pencil. But in theory, you just need to wait and go back in with your dry pencil. You can just do this with your Pablo, just go back in, a little bit more pressure, and just build that layer to increase that intensity. I just use that as a little demonstration to show you that that is another use that you can use for your watercolour pencils for, just by dampening that end. Okay, so I'm just here, I'm sort of ad-libbing here. You can't see it very much in the photo, but I know that I tend to like adding in a little bit of blue. So again, personal choice, it's optional if you put that in. That I use the light blue just to put in a tiny hint of the sky. So if you're using your Faber-Castell range, you could use the sky blue in there, just a little touch. You can see it was literally a touch. So again, make that optional. Now I am using the silver grey. I'm using the silver grey in touches, and normally in here I'd probably go in with an ivory or something, but I'm just going in with the silver grey, and the silver grey is a little bit cooler than the ash grey, which was quite warm. We use the ash grey for softening that bottom edge. We're using this silver grey almost to pick out. If you look at the iris, you see there's almost like round chunks of cool greyish cloudy areas in there, so I'm using this silver grey to pull those out. Remember, we want to keep it soft and glassy, not textured and furry. But you can just see that. You'll see when I'll zoom out from the picture at the end of doing this stage of the eyes, because this is zoomed in quite close, obviously, so the eyes are looking a lot bigger and a lot more in detail than they are in actuality in life size of the drawing. So when I zoom out, then it'll look in proportion. At the moment we're zoomed in way too much anyway, so it's going to look a little bit strange. So you see here, I'm just, again, still colour placing, still wiggling the pencil, varying the pressure, adding a tiny bit more pressure in the areas where this silver grey is more obvious. Just lightening the pressure over in that corner of the eye there. Okay, I'm possibly sharpening my pencils here. Yeah, I'm sharpening up so I can go back in for the last detail. So I just want to pop back in that iris. Sorry, the slit of the eye. I remember we've discussed in the eye videos itself about the theory of domestic cats and why they've got slit eyes. It's because they're hunters and they hunt at night, so that slit can open up and they can control the amount of light going into the eye. So this was taken outside in not too bright daylight, but in daylight, cat was looking up, so those slits are really tiny because it doesn't need to let a lot of light into the eye. So just strengthening up our initial underneath of the lid. And that forms that lovely outline. You can see we're only just over 20 minutes in and we're pretty much there with our eyes. Again, we're going to make tweaks later on. But they don't have to be exact. It's giving the effect. And when I zoom out, I'm actually really happy with the effect that we've got. And my eyes, they're nowhere near exact to that reference photo. And this is the whole thing. You just interpret it. Your eyes are going to be slightly different to mine, all of them. So I've just gone in there now with a touch of greyish black. Again, you could use something like a dark indigo if you wanted. It's just not quite black, not quite your light grey. It's quite bluish. And just gives a little hint up into, to break up into those highlights. But you could keep working these eyes. Like say, you could spend another half an hour on them, just keep working them, tweaking, popping in the colours. You don't really want to pop in any more of the detail. But there we are. So I'm going to zoom out now, and that brings us to the end of this eye tutorial. Thank you very much for watching.